morning, everyone, and welcome back to Marcus Morning Media. We'll be looking at the amount of media coverage that is surrounding 2016 presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. Joining us today, we have Republican Rosean Boyd, Congresswoman Manuela Peralta, and Democrat Benoit. Thank you for joining us today, and let's start this discussion.
For having us here today, Mr. Bedeau.
It is with great honor that we get to discuss Bernie Sanders' publicity on your show.
Yes, thank you for inviting us.
This is a current slogan that is heating up Mr. Sanders' campaign.
As soon as we go into Bernie Sanders' website, we see this.
This image shown of him and the phrase "Stand with Bernie" depicts that he is serious about his campaign, yet he's a friendly man and easy to talk to.
Why do you say that?
Well, to start off, the phrase "Stand with Bernie" and the choice to give your email address lets the audience know that you want to send out information about his goals and campaign, showing that he's serious about his position.
You're right, Dave. And the smile on his face shows that he is an easygoing and friendly man.
Now, with no further ado, Manuela, why don't you introduce us to our first text?
Here we have a political cartoon that is going in favor of Bernie Sanders. This cartoon is depicting the popularity that Bernie Sanders is receiving. Dave, what do you think?
Yes, Manuel, I totally agree with you. On the left, you have Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush organizing new strategies for their campaigns because Bernie is attracting immense crowds. On the right is Mr. Sanders riding in the Popemobile, which is where Pope Francis rides, indicating that he is drawing immensely large crowds.
You know, speaking of the Pope, Vatican City is so big that it became its own separate country.
Wow, that's impressive. Basically, what the political cartoon is portraying is that Bernie draws in large populations of people.
But what about the other cartoon?
Here we have an interesting political cartoon that seems to counterbalance with Bernie's campaign.
What do you think that this illustration is saying about the candidate?
What is being said is that Bernie is running an unrealistic and idealistic campaign.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that the cartoon could be perceived that Sanders' campaign style can lead others to believe that Hillary has an advantage.
What about the throwing of the match into the firewood? What does that action portray Mr. Sanders as?
Well, it shows that he is one to disregard certain situations even if it's for the better.
Let's continue with the articles.
Well, Rosean, if there's one thing that can be said about Bernie Sanders is that he is one ambitious man. His many convictions are one of the key traits that may give him the lead. This being said, being one of the recent articles, Sanders in Iowa focuses on college affordability.
That's for sure, but what examples in particular that's getting you all burned up?
Well, there are many, but one in particular that burns brightest is his desire to provide free tuition throughout the nation.
I remember reading about his pledge at the press release done in Iowa. As noble as it is, I do have to say it's kind of a stretch.
How come? If pressing for change is what you call a stretch, then he should expand as much as he can. Sanders is doing the one thing that will always stand as the motivation for younger voters: education.
And that's exactly my point, Manuela. The epicenter of a country's economy lies at the heart of its workforce. In this growing competitive economy our nation is subjugated to, the only way to combat the opposition is to implement our workforce with well-educated individuals willing to pursue their goals.
The goals and pursuits of our nation's newer generations can't come past if they are afraid of the hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt that will be a result of tuition costs for public colleges and universities.
I totally agree with that point because we need to fuel the minds of our future doctors, dentists, politicians, and lawyers. This, however, cannot become a reality if we are leeching out of their savings accounts. Don't you agree, Rosean?
As pure as his intentions may lie, Sanders' convictions will have to be funded somewhere.
And that's the kind of mentality that is holding us back as a nation. The fear of spending money.
And that is the very mentality that is going to aid Bernie Sanders in his pursuit, because he doesn't fear money. He understands the ramifications of withholding the knowledge from our students due to financial stresses. And he has the plan to extract the money from some source in order to provide our nation's young adults the freedom to learn and explore the world with the acquired knowledge that was given to them.
Even if I wanted to, I can't argue with Dave, and I also can't argue with the ideals of Bernie Sanders. It's enough to influence the wills of even the most immovable stones. I hope his will can affect yours as well as Rosean.
Sanders may already have in this aspect.
What does the next article say about Sanders?
This is an article titled, Why Bernie Sanders Won't Take the Gloves Off Against Hillary, written by Niall Stainage. Right off the bat, in the first sentence, it says, Senator Bernie Sanders will never run an attack against Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton, a top advisor in the liberal firebrand.
Wow, that's a very strong claim to initiate this article.
I agree. The word never is a strong but powerful word, especially as it is being used right here. Principally, what the top advisor is trying to say was that Sanders is intimidated by Clinton since he will never run a tax ads against her. Let's keep going.
On the third paragraph, it states Devin suggested that any attempt by Sanders to torch Clinton would only incinerate the senator's own chances.
Such great diction is being used in that sentence. The use of the words torch and incinerate really play a major role in this paragraph. They both clearly have negative connotations.
I really like how the two words relate to one another. It really made the paragraph flow beautifully.
Devin is stating that if Sanders tries to take down Clinton, it isn't going to affect her, but it is going to distress his own campaign.
Niall Stainage ends the article with a quote from Devin. He said, "A lot of people who are coming to him are completely disenchanted with politics. If you get into all this and look like the rest of the politicians, the conversation is over." What catches my attention is the word is disenchanting.
Basically, what Stainage is saying is that all the mass haters of Sanders aren't necessarily angered by him, but with politics. Stooping to the level would erase all the valid credibility he truly possesses.
Well, guys, let's proceed to the video.
Let me turn now to Mike Papantonio, Ring of Fire radio host. Also with us tonight, Mercedes Schlapp. She's a Republican strategist and former spokesperson for President George W. Bush. Great to have both of you with us. All right, what do you think? Here we go, Mike Papantonio. The first shot over the bow from a fellow Democrat to Bernie Sanders. He's a socialist. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I had a fundraiser for McCaskill. I really regret that now because she didn't need to say that. Look, Bernie Sanders has changed the narrative of the campaign. He's talking about what he's been all of his life. And you know what it is? He's there for the environment. He's there for campaign finance reform. All these things aren't just merely talking points. He's lived this. If you take a look at his record, I mean, if you just go right down the record after 25 years, his voting record is impressive on virtually everything. Over the years, this is what he said he would bring us, and this is what he's brought. He's against all forms of domestic spying, for example, proposed constitution to the amendment guaranteeing equal rights for gender, voted in favor of proposal to strengthen Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. This has got to be troublesome for the GOP because you know what? Independents agree with him and Republicans who are rational thinkers agree with him as well. You could go down the list. There's nothing.
Yes.
Mercedes Schlapp, I got to ask you. I mean, here you've got a Democrat attacking a Democrat, calling him a socialist. Isn't this red meat for Republicans?
Goodness gracious, it's something that the Republicans normally do. We're always kind of going after each other. So, yeah, it was shocking, I think, that she came out so strongly against Bernie Sanders, especially because he's starting to gain some traction in states like Iowa and New Hampshire. So, you know, again, he kind of has that calling for the liberal party base voter there. And I think that that's something that is starting to resonate in those states. The question for Bernie Sanders, besides the fact that obviously he's having issues with certain core Democratic constituencies like the African-American community, is does he have the grassroots capability? He doesn't have the war chest. And those are going to be issues and obstacles that he's going to be running into in other critical states.
Guys, as you see in the video, Bernie Sanders is really benefiting from Claire McCaskill's comments.
She's definitely made a huge mistake on calling Bernie Sanders a socialist, especially when they're coming from the same political side.
I just want to piggyback off of what Dave said on how they're on the same political side. Usually when you hear some type of behavior, it's occurring on the Republican Party. So it shocks me to see this type of action made by a Democratic politician.
Good thing Mr. Sanders is more mature in this situation, or this could have gone south real fast. It's really funny how it worked out. She was trying to bring down Mr. Sanders' reputation, but instead, her reputation came down.
Well, that's all for today, folks. I hope you guys learned something, and thank all my good guests for joining us today. Next time, we'll be covering a story on how cats are terrorizing our society. And that's all, but remember, can you feel the burn? Thank you. Have a good night.